Hi, welcome to this video. One of the things that I'm going to do over the next several months is create a lot of content around how to start a business. So back in 2017, I started a bookkeeping business. So I'm going to walk through the steps of kind of how that happened, you know, because I think sometimes people anticipate that starting a business has to be a huge effort, and it doesn't always have to be like that. Especially if you're in the services industry, oftentimes you don't have to. Uh, you can start really small. I mean, really small, and grow from there. Uh, oftentimes it doesn't require a whole lot of upfront money, etc. Some industries do require some upfront money, um, but we'll talk through all of the specifics of that. And so I will talk specifically about how I started my business. So if you want to start a bookkeeping business, you can follow along with kind of how I did it, um, and modify from there for your own circumstances. But I will also be describing clients that we've worked with and how they started, you know, uh, what strategies they used, etc., so that you can start to see that no matter what it is that you want to do, you can start where you are. And a lot of you have very specialized knowledge that could be very useful in small businesses, for example. So we'll talk about all of that. In general, I'm going to talk about four overarching areas that you'll have to think about. One being marketing, how you get yourself out there, and regardless of whether you're extroverted or introverted, there are ways to do this um, that can fit into what your strengths are. For example, I'm very introverted. Okay. So I have to be careful overloading myself talking to people, but uh, it can be done, and there are ways to kind of deal with that. I will also be talking about paid and unpaid ways of marketing, and there's lots of different things to do there. I will also talk about a category called tools. Now, tools for a service business is often going to be software and how you evaluate software and what kind of tech stack you have. Um, but there's also some businesses that are going to require physical infrastructure, either buildings or equipment of some kind, small tools, that sort of thing. So we'll talk about all of that and kind of how you deal with that. The third broad category is going to be contracts. Okay. Now, I didn't start out with contracts, but over time I had to develop them because as you get bigger, as you get more well known, and especially around clients, you want to have clear boundaries of what you provide, don't provide, et cetera, et cetera. So, with employees, contractors, clients, there are various contracts considerations. Now, I know it's a dry subject, I know, but it is the one thing that actually helps you um, in a lot of ways to manage clients and to keep your, keep your business in good shape. Okay. And then finally, I will talk about operations, you know, how to select a bookkeeper should you ever need one. And a lot of times people start out using a bookkeeper because they're just not comfortable in that space. They're not comfortable putting together forecasts, and cash flow and blah, blah, blah. So when do you choose somebody like that, etc. Plus, there's a lot of processes and procedures around running a business that is very much process oriented. And no matter who you work with on a contractual basis, um, or whether you have employees, don't have employees, etc., your business processes will require attention. And it will require you to make sure that that is efficient for you and for people that work with you. Okay. So we'll talk about all of that. And there may be some sporadic items that I will talk about that really don't fall into those categories. But those are the broad four that every business they're just gonna have to deal with. And then finally, um, there's a SCORE business plan template. You don't have to build a template, this template, but it does help to kind of jot down your thoughts and ideas. Whether you show it to anybody or not that's a decision you can make later. Um, but the business plan template is actually very good, and I did it initially. Not that I shared it with a bank. I didn't have to. I didn't have to go for loans and things like that. But it doesn't hurt to go through the exercise. So I'm going to post that for you to be able to download. Also, I have a cash flow template that I use. It doesn't fit every business, but it can be modified, right? And that's one of the reasons you might work with us to modify that template. Or you can work with anyone to modify that template, honestly. If you find a good bookkeeper in your area that you want to work with, or you know somebody you want to work with, great. you know, but I do have it available so you can see it. And I will do video content about that, podcast content, etc. Uh, so that you can kind of follow along with how to use it, how to work with it, that sort of thing. Also, I do have a tools assessment template. It's fairly straightforward. You can build your own. You can modify this one pretty easily for what you want to do with it. But I will describe that as well. I will have other documents as we go along, like sample contracts, uh, sample marketing materials, that type of thing. So you can take these and modify them as you wish. Okay. So the beauty of this is that I'm going to go through every situation, step that I've taken to create this build this business over the years. I've been in business for almost a decade now. It is quite rewarding. It is very empowering. And so I want others to be able to do the same thing. So look forward to this and all the great content that I will provide for you for free. Okay. Now, if you want some consulting from us, that's another thing. We can talk about that. I will post links for how you can have an initial free consultation with us, or with me specifically. Uh, but other than that, this content is free for you to use. Okay. So thanks so much. I appreciate it, and I will be back with you soon.